When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Hi everyone and welcome to the 62nd episode of Praticamente Inglese. Hope you're doing well, guys. Hope you had a great weekend. Today I will interview Ali from Learn It Just Right. He is an English language instructor at the University of Turin, and I'm sure he will bring us so much value in terms of tips on how to improve our English. We said that this will be the year. 2022 will be the year where we will improve English, so let's do it together. Let me switch in Italian and then we'll get started with today's interview. Ciao a tutti ragazzi, oggi come vi dicevo continuo il viaggio per cercare di portarvi quanti più possibili consigli su come migliorare l'inglese, da chi ovviamente lo fa in questo caso di mestiere, perché oggi intervisterò un insegnante, un istruttore di inglese, quindi cercherò di tirare fuori tutto il possibile per portarvi i migliori spunti e consigli su come migliorare l'inglese. Come sempre vi ricordo, se non l'avete già fatto ovviamente, di lasciare una review per il podcast su Spotify o su Apple Podcast. È molto importante anche per aiutare le persone che non conoscono praticamente inglese ad avvicinarsi al mio podcast. What else? Praticamente Inglese is almost everywhere, on Instagram, YouTube, on Patreon, on Telegram. So you can write me on, you can send me a DM on LinkedIn if you want to share your thoughts or you want to give me a feedback about the podcast and things that you would love to listen on this podcast. So let's get started with today's episode, and I would like to welcome Ali. Hi, Ali.
Hi, Mattia. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, great. I'm so happy. We met on Clubhouse, right?
Right. Yeah. Totally out of accident.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's fantastic. And the good thing about, this interview is that you are an English teacher, right?
Right. I happen to be an experienced English teacher.
And that's great because I'm always trying to bring value to my audience. You should know that my audience are like people trying to improve and learn English. So it's great to have the point of view of an English teacher in terms of tips, in terms of things you should do or you shouldn't do.
I'm honored. I'm honored to be able to share that with you.
Okay, that's great. So my first question is why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
My name is Ali, and I've been an English teacher for over 16 years in 5 different countries. I started teaching in 2000, or sometime around 2004, and then I started traveling the world and teaching in different countries. I worked as an English teacher in Turkey, in Iran, in Sweden, in the United States, and now I'm in Italy, and I've been here for the past 7 years.
Okay, that's great. So you speak Italian as well, then?
I speak B1, A2 plus Italian officially.
Okay. So you can understand definitely an Italian.
I try.
Okay, that's great. It's great because you are in Italy, but you are able to speak just in English, right? Is it challenging or?
I actually managed to get by with my bad Italian. But when I first came here in 2015, it was a real hassle because I had to communicate with people in English and a very basic Italian. So I would say it was it was quite unpleasant from time to time, yeah. But then after a while, I learned the basics, and now I can get by with my A2 plus B1 level of Italian.
Yeah, you know why? Because I said this in my last episode. I was shocked when I was in Germany, and I was able to speak with everybody in English. In Italy, it's quite different because the level of knowledge of English in Italy is very low. What do you think?
You are underestimating Italians. Well, I have noticed that quite a few people, at least in northern Italy, they know Italian, especially if you go to Milano. Wow, there's a lot of people.
They know English, you mean?
They know English, sorry. Yeah, they know
fine.
English. Quite a few of them speak a perfect English. By perfect, I mean they can communicate and they can help you in any way you need it. So maybe once you have to try going around and speaking with people in English. Let's see how many people can get back to you and help you.
Yeah, in fact, I would like to ask you, why should people learn English? I think that's the core. Why?
That's a really good question. That goes back to my job too. Let me explain to you why I ended up here and then I answer the question.
Okay.
I ended up in Italy because Italy, Spain, Portugal, or South European countries are perfect for English teachers. I would call them the heaven for English teachers because the demand for English is quite high here. Mm-hmm. As people do not grow up learning English on TV. As I used to live in Scandinavia, it was a whole different story. People grow up learning English from TV. Mm-hmm. And over here, people need to learn English at the age of 18, 19, 20 when they start college, because it's only then that they realize that they need English to be able to apply for jobs. Mm-hmm. So being in an international environment, working with different clients in different countries, these two factors have contributed to Italians realizing that they need to learn English. And I would say it's essential because in this day and age, without knowing a foreign language, be it English or any other languages, English primarily, you are not going to be able to develop your network or start a business anywhere.
Ok, faccio un piccolo recap in italiano. Giustamente, come dici tu, in altri paesi la TV è già in inglese, in lingua originale. Invece siamo noi in Italia che cresciamo con i programmi, e questa è una cosa che già abbiamo, diciamo, toccato in precedenti episodi. E in più mi dici, ci si accorge che abbiamo bisogno dell'inglese quando c'è di mezzo il business. Quindi quando bisogna fare l'application per un lavoro o quando c'è da avere rapporti internazionali, eccetera, eccetera, ovviamente, e qui casca l'asino, dobbiamo comunicare in inglese. Ovviamente, come dici tu, anche altre lingue, ma in generale lo standard internazionale è quello dell'inglese, right?
Right, anche per me, per un persona straniero che è venuto in Italia, il mio priorità è capire italiano e usare italiano per effective communication. I always focus on effective communication because that's the objective. Also for my clients, I want to help. Most of my clients are commercialistas and lawyers, and also the university students here in Torino who need eventually to be able to communicate effectively for work purposes.
Okay, I understand your point. You are saying that what really matters is that you can express yourself and the person in front of you will understand.
Yeah, effective communication is the ultimate priority. However, people do not pay me for effective communication. My clients pay me for accuracy on top of effective communication.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely understood your point. And in that case, in order to study English, I think the best option would be to have a teacher, right?
That's a very good question. I believe that learning English, much like any other learning processes, requires professional assistance. And by professional assistance, as I also promoted on my page on YouTube and Instagram, is that you need to hire a teacher, to have a professional teach you and walk you through the process step by step to be able to develop professionally, to develop systematically. So obviously you need to have a class, you need to be in a class, you need to deal with the problem with a teacher needs to guide you. And I would say this is a must. This is a must, much like any other services offered on the market.
So let's say I'm an intermediate, or I'm just someone that understands English, is able to, read English and write a little bit of what the best option would be? Like, for example, in terms, I don't know, I would start with a dictionary. I need to learn quite a few
Definitely
words.
not, Mattia.
No?
Definitely not with the
Okay.
dictionary.
Tell
I
me what
always
would be
tell
the
people.
best option then for me.
The best option is to ask a friend of a friend of a friend who has had a teacher, and find the right teacher for your needs. Most of my clients are intermediate above, because elementary and pre-intermediate students prefer to be with teachers who speak their first language.
Right.
So I would say contact the right teacher, schedule a proper program, step by step, follow the teacher's guides, and that's it. Yeah, you need, but finding the right teacher is not an easy task.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it's absolutely
and also
difficult.
as you mentioned, of course, if I have a very low level of English, I would rather prefer to have an
Absolutely.
an Italian teacher, and then as soon as I get to an intermediate, would be even much easier for me, and I could have more value from an international teacher because of the pronunciation, of course, and is that right?
Right, Mattia. This is not what I recommend, though. This is what happens commonly. What I recommend is that have lessons from the very beginning with a professional teacher, be it native English speaker or non-native English speaker. As long as they are trained to teach English, then that's fine. And I assume that by default, any teacher on any level must have native-like proficiency in that language. I cannot be a French teacher and speak A2 level of French. No, I have to have native-like proficiency in that language. So I think that what happens is that people prefer to have lessons with an Italian teacher, but what I recommend is that they have lessons with a professional who speaks the language fluently at a native level.
Ok, faccio un recap in italiano. Giustamente tu dici, la cosa più importante ovviamente è affidarsi a un insegnante di inglese, un professionista che capisca esattamente il tuo livello, i tuoi bisogni, e in funzione di quello crea un programma personalizzato per portarti avanti e farti evolvere nell'inglese. E in più io dicevo, è ovvio che magari preferisco, se io avessi un livello base di inglese, preferirei comunque avere un italiano, perché parliamo forse un po' in italiano, mi capisco un pochino meglio, no? Rispetto all'inizio ad avere un insegnante madrelingua, no? Invece magari più avanti, quando il mio livello diventa un intermedio, inizio quindi a capire bene, posso anche avere un insegnante in madrelingua, perché tanto di quello stiamo parlando, di imparare quella lingua lì. Ma il tuo punto è, a prescindere che sia internazionale, che sia straniero, che sia italiano, l'importante è che la pronuncia e il livello di inglese in questo caso sia comunque di alto livello, anche a livello di pronuncia, perché ovviamente se la pronuncia non è corretta, imparo la pronuncia non corretta, no? Giusto? Questo è il tuo punto.
Esattamente. Quello che io dico è che dobbiamo risolvere il problema dal primo punto, from scratch, from the beginning, non quando siamo intermediate.
Right. Okay. Since the beginning.
Since the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. But coming back to my question.
Sure.
Let's get practical. Should we memorize the dictionary or learn chunks of that dictionary?
I actually had a long post on my page on social media about this. No, we should definitely not memorize the dictionary. Okay. We don't need to know 5,000 words to speak a language. What we need is exposure. What do I mean by exposure? I mean, we need to listen to the radio in English. We need to watch first language materials, the BBC, the CNN, Netflix. We have access to pretty much everything these days.
True.
And while we are watching and listening, we need to take note of the chunks, expressions, phrasal verbs that we hear in context.
Right. Okay.
This process is time consuming and slow, but this is the ultimate solution.
Yeah. you need to be, let's say in this case, practical.
Absolutely.
It doesn't really matter to learn, as you said, 5,000 words, but then at the end of the day, you will not use those words. It's easier to, learn and understand, day by day sentences and expressions that you will use. No, and what do you think about learning English in English speaking country or at home? There's differences, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously, the priority for all learners is to learn English in an English speaking country, but it is costly, it is expensive to go and live in another country. So not all of us have the chance to live in another country. Therefore, we need to bring that environment to our home country, to where we live. Mm-hmm. And this is only made possible by having professional assistance from someone whose job is teaching. So I would say, ideally, living in another country can help. However, we need to mention that many foreigners, I can say many Italians in London, they end up hanging out with Italians. And right. In a process of, in a period of 10 years, they don't learn a good English. They practice their Italian rather than English. So this is the sad part. But the good part, going back to my earlier point, when you live in an English-speaking country, you learn the chunks. Let me give you a quick example. For example, everybody knows the word go. Everybody knows the word to. But there is a chunk as to go, for here or to go. And many Italians don't know this chunk. They know the word to, they know the word go, but they don't know what it means when we say for here or to go. It means you want to eat here or you want da portare via, to go. A very simple chunk, but you can learn it from a person who is teaching English professionally.
Yeah, what you said is amazing, because I have, I lived in London for almost, more than 6 years there. And you said something that, it's so true. So there's Italians that if they hang out with other Italians, it's very difficult for them, even though they are living abroad, to understand and to improve their English. Usually I do the example in the Italian restaurant. Let's say I'm working in the Italian restaurant as a waiter, as a cook. And of course, I'm exposed more to Italian than English, right?
Exactly. That's what I always tell my students. I always tell them it's a misconception. If you live in Australia, but you hang out with Hungarians when you are from Hungary, what are you going to do? You're going to improve your Hungarian?
Yeah, that's true. You are very active. You told me that you're active on social media. Could you give us, some examples or things that could be, something that we can, of course, on top of your page, and I will ask you at the end, where can we find you and so forth. But in general, what could be useful for people and what I should, watch on Instagram, on TikTok? What's your suggestion?
Absolutely. My number one tip is, my favorite radio station is a radio station called WNYC in New York. I always recommend that my students listen to this radio station and take notes, because this radio station provides up-to-date vocabulary, chunks, and phrases that people can use to speak English. My second tip is focus on pronunciation from original resources. So on Instagram or on YouTube, there is quite a few resources you can trust. It's difficult to know where to find them. It's only a matter of Googling and trying and searching, but focus on pronunciation. And in terms of pronunciation, we have to focus on stress and intonation. Many people are under the false impression that they have to sound American or sound British. This is incorrect. We have to sound right. Much like my paces, learn it just right. We have to sound right. And to sound right means, for example, we have to say alone, not alone. This is a very good example of sounding right. So that's number two. Number three, I recommend people focus on accuracy in grammar and learning grammar in action. This is what they can find online as well. My favorite websites on the internet are the British Council website. The British Council offers a variety of resources for English learners. Also, on top of that, in terms of dictionaries, I recommend the Cambridge Dictionary. Please don't use Reverso. Don't use Google Translate. Google Translate and Reverso are enemies. Sono terribili, guys. Don't use them. Only Cambridge Dictionary. These are all I can offer.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Very good tips. And also, as you said, yes, we used to use those sinonimi.
I know
I
that.
sinonimi, cerchiamo Google Translate, or we translate on Google Translate, and then the sentence is coming out is like a mess, you know? And we use that, and we start using that sentence because we think it's correct, but it's not. So people looking at us is like, what are you talking about? You know?
Can I offer a trick?
Yeah.
There is a trick. If your audience want to know if a dictionary is good or bad, they can type this sentence in Italian. Io sono qui da 2 ore. If the translation is I am here since 2 hours, that dictionary sucks. Because present perfect is the best way to understand if a translating app is right or wrong. Present perfect is the ultimate problem of Italians, Spanish, and I would say pretty much every nationality. So one way to understand, type in there. If you don't get I have been here for 2 hours, you can trash that app.
Okay, very good tip. And you were talking about, effective communication. And how can we reach, effective communication?
That's a really good question. I believe effective communication is the output of having consistency in our learning process. Consistency means we need to practice on a daily basis. I have students who happen to be commercialistas and lawyers, and they are very busy. They contact me and they say, Ali, I want effective communication, but I am busy during the week. And I say, I'm so sorry. It's impossible to reach effective communication without consistency.
Right.
You need to practice on a daily basis. In addition, I also recommend that learners have a partner, be it a native English speaker or non-native English speaker, can help you practice your English and improve the fluency in that language. So we need to use it or we're going to lose it. Use it or lose it.
That's true. You need to set a routine. And you need to practice. You need to be exposed to English. Or you were talking about, to find someone, and that would be fantastic. For example, I'm just thinking right now, you have a colleague, and then you say to the colleague, okay, in the next hour, even though you are at work, in the next hour, we communicate just in English. That could be a nice exercise in order to, practice English and try to do your best to express yourself in English.
That's what happened to me in Sweden, Mattia. When I lived in Sweden between 2010 and 2009 and 2013, Swedes would only speak in English when I was around.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why? Because they said it would be offensive to talk in our first language when somebody doesn't understand it.
Okay.
Plus, they found it as a reason. So why not just copy the way Scandinavians have learned English? Practice it 24/7.
Ok, qua c'è bisogno di un piccolo recap in italiano.
Certo.
Fondamentalmente quello che ci siamo detti, e comunque lo hanno capito in tanti ormai, è quello che la pratica è sicuramente la chiave per poter arrivare a comunicare in maniera efficace in inglese. E quindi il fatto di poter dire che dedico soltanto un sabato o anche 2-3 ore di sabato, sarebbe meglio dedicare 20 minuti tutti i giorni, no? Il tempo sarebbe lo stesso, però il fatto di farlo in maniera con consistency, con diciamo una frequenza definita, sicuramente può aiutare in questo. E come dici tu ai tuoi clienti, non è possibile arrivare a un effective communication soltanto sei busy, devi trovare quel tempo per imparare o esercitarti. E l'altra cosa è quella di, come hai detto tu, un bellissimo esempio, le persone quando lavoravi in Svezia, le persone intorno a te svedesi parlavano in inglese per rispetto a te, per far sì che tu capissi, ma anche perché loro sono cresciuti anche con l'inglese oltre che con lo svedese, no? Quindi è ovviamente semplice e tutto lì è il fatto, perché seppure noi fossimo cresciuti in Italia con molto più inglese, fosse una seconda lingua a tutti gli effetti, ovviamente sarebbe diverso per noi. E come dici tu all'inizio, avevi detto una frase bellissima, i paesi europei, diciamo, latini, no? La Spagna, il Portogallo, l'Italia,
Esattamente.
è il miglior posto dove insegnare l'inglese perché ce n'è tanto bisogno, ce n'è tanta richiesta. Deriva proprio da questa cosa qui, che noi abbiamo avuto i doppiatori, tutti i film sono stati doppiati in lingua italiana, e siamo stati veramente esposti pochissimo. Nelle nostre scuole, fin dall'inizio, le elementari, le scuole primarie, si fa soltanto un'oretta di inglese, se ci pensi è veramente pochissimo, quasi nulla, e insomma abbiamo le nostre difficoltà, però come hai detto tu, la chiave è quella di darsi una routine, praticare in maniera costante, farsi ovviamente, chi ne ha la possibilità, aiutare da un insegnante di inglese che crea un programma personalizzato in funzione di quelle che sono le esigenze, ma anche il fatto di cercare il più possibile di poter comunicare con qualcuno che magari vuole anche lui imparare l'inglese e cercare di sforzarsi a comunicare, insomma, ecco.
Posso dire in cosa in italiano?
Sì, certo.
Secondo me l'unica e l'ultima trick, l'ultima soluzione, l'unica soluzione è consistency.
Mhm.
Non lo so come dire consistency in Italian.
Beh, consistency è fondamentalmente la frequenza, cioè nel senso il fatto che
Esattamente.
ogni giorno in maniera costante, ogni giorno dedico un pezzettino del mio tempo a quella cosa perché siccome è tutto legato alla pratica, ovviamente, se io passo una settimana, 2 settimane senza quella cosa, un po' me la sono scordata, un po' e torno un po' come il gioco dell'oca, torno un po' al punto di partenza.
Esattamente.
Okay, my very last question. I know that this is just because it's part of the format of Praticamente Inglese, but you answer to this question during our interview. I always ask to my guests 3 final tips on how to improve English. You could do also a recap because I think you gave us quite a few tips during the
Yeah.
interview, but you can do maybe a recap of those 3 main things that you think are very important for someone who wants to improve English, let's say.
Absolutely. Tip number 1 on how to improve our English. Tip number 1, get a notebook or use the note app on your phone and take note of the words, phrases, chunks, and expressions in context.
Mhm.
So in tip number 1, by default, it's also included that you need to watch a lot, you need to listen a lot, and you need to read a lot.
Mhm.
You have to be exposed to good English. Tip number 2, get a teacher today. Do not think that having a teacher is expensive and I'm going to play a trick and learn English in one day online. No, it's not going to happen. You need a teacher, maybe 20 hours, 30 hours, but get a professional to help you. And tip number 3, get the right book. Do not get yourself surrounded with millions of books and then end up not studying any of them.
Yeah.
So read one book, get one book and make sure to stick with it.
Right.
And be consistent.
Okay.
These are the 3 top tips.
Fantastico. Faccio io il piccolo recap in italiano, di segnarvi tutte quelle che sono le frasi, le parole che ascoltate e soprattutto di segnarvi e studiarvi quelle parole, quelle frasi che sono contestualizzate con quello che dovete fare, con quello con cui dovete comunicare, perché ovviamente ci sono delle cose che sono più legate al day to day di quello che se lo fate per professione, perché avete un cliente straniero, imparate e studiate quel contesto di frasi che dovrete usare per comunicare con quella persona, ovviamente. Ovviamente mi sembra giusto da parte tua che tu lo dica, trovatevi anche un insegnante di inglese che vi dà la giusta strada, capisce quelle che sono le vostre difficoltà, il vostro livello in funzione anche della vostra persona, perché immagino che ogni cliente è diverso, no? Perché ognuno ha diverse
Giusto.
tipologie di... no, che qualcuno l'ha imparato un po' così, o qualcuno ha le rimembranze di quando lo studiava a scuola, no? E così via. E poi ovviamente, oltre all'essere esposti all'inglese, quello di essere costanti, quindi di avere una costanza che sia di 15, 20 minuti, mezz'ora, di avere una costanza, e se si è preso un libro di inglese, prendere quel libro e starci sopra a quel libro. È inutile avere 10 libri, dici, ho comprato l'ultimo libro, però poi magari nessuno lo legge e rimarrà lì a prendere polvere, no? Quindi di prenderne magari uno solo, definire quello che è il migliore secondo il proprio livello, secondo magari quello che l'insegnante inglese diciamo suggerisce, e poi stare su quello, insomma, ed essere costanti su quello. Mi sembrano 3 tips molto molto importanti. Very, very good. Now,
Can I
tell me.
something very quickly? Because in terms of books, now your audience may ask, so which book?
Mm-hmm.
Which book? I tell them the books published through Cambridge are reliable. The books that I use. If you're looking for a book about grammar, English grammar in use by Cambridge is the best.
Right.
If you are looking, yeah, exactly. If you're looking to study for business purposes, business benchmark series are great books. If you're looking to improve business benchmark, most of your audience, they want to learn English for business purposes. I can guarantee that because I know. Business benchmark is perfect for business purposes.
Fantastic. And the very last question is, where can we find you, Ali? I know that you're very active on social media. And so just where can we find you?
It's very easy. Go on Google, type learn it just right. I'm available on Instagram. I'm available on YouTube. And most importantly, on Clubhouse.
Okay, yeah, that's great. You know that I created a club called as the podcast, the Praticamente Inglese. And what I usually do, and this is the invitation to the audience, every Friday at 1 p.m., we just meet half an hour just to, kind of trying to push them, to my audience, to meet, to have a chat in English. So that's great to be exposed to English and to try to, remove all the fear to speak. You should practice English. And if you can't, because you don't have people around you, or maybe you're busy whatsoever, half an hour is more than enough to at least try to say a few words. And so this is my invitation. If you're around, of course, I know you're busy with your lessons and things, but sometimes if you're around on the Friday at 1 p.m., you can just jump in, pop in, and you can just say hi.
Absolutely. I also promoted your club on my page, and I'm a proud member of Praticamente, Inglese, in Bella Italia.
Fantastic. It was a great interview. Thank you very much for all the value you gave us, and very practical tips. And this is just incredible, and this is what I was looking for. So have a great day. To all my audience, I would wish you a great week ahead, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, Ali.
Bye, thank you again.
Segui i podcast di Voice sulla tua app di podcast preferita. E se sei un utente Prime, ascoltalo senza pubblicità su Amazon Music.